Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about this damp box that I made. This is for working with clay. Alright, so if you're new to pottery or you're new to clay or you aren't familiar with the damp box, you've never used one, this is mainly to keep your work from drying out super fast. So if you're working with clay, it has life stages. So when you're working with clay, you're on the clock. So you have the stage where your clay is really wet and it's malleable, and then you have stages where your clay is like bone dry and it's crumbly and it's stuck in the form before you fire it. Okay, so this is all before you're firing. And the reason why you may want to have a damp box is so that when you're working on pieces, like for example, when I worked on this bowl here, you see I made all these flowers. Well, when you separate clay from a larger piece of clay, if I break off a small piece of clay from this, it's going to dry out very fast than if this were just a huge block of clay. Okay, so when you're working on tiny details that you're attaching to a larger body of clay, those flowers are going to dry out, and you can't attach wet clay to dry clay. It won't adhere properly. Both pieces of clay have to be wet. So ideally, now I happen to do this in one day, but ideally, let's say I was working on a really big bowl. When I'm making my flowers, I could just as I make them, put them inside the damp box, and they would stay wet longer until I'm completed with all the flowers and I'm ready to attach them to the bowl. Okay, so pottery plaster, which in general, it comes in a very large bag. Pottery plaster is different than regular plaster, okay? So usually the brand that you're gonna get is #1 pottery plaster. And again, it comes in like pound bags, 10-pound bags, 25-pound bags. And you're going to be mixing that with water. So the general ratio for pottery plaster, and if you have a specific brand of pottery plaster, you want to look up the specific ratio for your brand, but generally it is 100 parts plaster to 70 parts water, and you want to do this by weight. So if you weigh out, let's say your container, you know that this is going to be, I think for mine it was like, okay, so the other uses for pottery plaster, it's the same material, same ratio, but for, let's say I wanted to reclaim clay. So if you're like wheel throwing and you have a lot of slop or like the mud, the slip that's really, really watery, after you mix and run that through a filter and it's all the same consistency, you can actually put that reclaimed clay onto a slab like this and allow it to dry for a couple of days, and it'll eventually get workable. And I think I've done that before. I don't know if that video is still on my page, but I have done that before. Also, pottery plaster is used to make molds. So if you have a slip casting mold, most of the time that's going to be made out of mainly pottery plaster, or any sort of bowl molds, or I'm trying to think of what else, like for mugs, bowls, plates that you see in the pottery store, those are made out of pottery plaster, so you can make your own molds also. All right, so key thing about this, #1, you want to do this outside. Why? Because pottery plaster is toxic if you inhale it. So you may also want to have your mask, and when you go outside, so first you want to weigh your water, weigh your plaster, do all that ahead of time so you know the amount. Then you want to add the water into the container. Then, and this is why you want to do it outside, you're going to grab your plaster and you're going to, like slake it in. Okay, so after it's all put in there, you'll have these little mounds. Then you want to go in and mix it. You can mix with your hands, or you can use like a drill mixer. You want to make sure you're not introducing air or a whole bunch of air, because then you'll have lots of air bubbles. So just mix it slowly. And you want to do this so you try not to get any air bubbles into it. And then after that, then you mix it. So you can either do it directly in the container, or you could do this generally in a bucket until it's well mixed, and then you could pour it into your container. Me personally, I just did everything in one container. After that, then you want to just let it sit uncovered, undisturbed for like 24 to 48 hours till it sets up. And that's how you make a damp box. So if you have any questions, please drop them down below. I'll be working on some other projects today probably, but first I'm going to get coffee. Bye.